parthaya yadatmana drita swayam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Janardhan, Lord Krishna, is the form to accept all the results of sacrifice. If he is not satisfied, then one's labor for advancement is futile. He is the ultimate self, and therefore, one who does not satisfy him certainly neglects his own interests. So in the previous verses, we saw Brahma appreciating the quality of Swayambhavu Manu of being obedient to his father. And Brahma glorifies that quality, rightly so. But here is saying that ultimately one needs to satisfy the personality of Godhead. So the service to the Father is best executed when it is aligned to the interests of the Lord. And conversely, those who do not satisfy the Lord can never be self-satisfied. So this is a powerful statement Brahma is making. And Jiva Goswami in Krama Sandharma, he says that the reason why this is true is that if one does not respect Paramatma, he will not respect Atma, and vice versa. So satisfaction comes out of the sense of respect, of understanding what is needed and then acting according to it. So Jiva Goswami says is that the interests of the Atma and the Paramatma, or Atma and Krishna, are so closely aligned to one another that if one does not honor one, the other one is automatically left unsatisfied. And Prabhupada says that it is in one's own self-interest to execute prescribed devotional service. And then anyone who neglects the process neglects his own self-interest. So devotional service is acting according to the interest of the Lord. And Prabhupada says that it is in your own self-interest to act according to the interest of the Lord. So Brahma here addresses Krishna as in three terms. He calls him Bhagwan, Yagya Lingaha, and Janardhan. And these are the forms that Swayambhu Manu will take cognizance of or will perceive. So as Bhagwan, he is the personality that needs to be served. As Yangaliga, he is the benefactor of all the sacrifices. And as Janardhan, he is the well-wisher of all the living entities. And Swayambhavu Manu is himself going to be playing that role, that he is going to be giving the yagyas. And in the rule book of Manus, there are so many yagyas that are given. And Brahma is saying Yagya Linga is Krishna. And Brahma has already asked Manu to be the protector of living entities. But Krishna as Janardhan is the ultimate protector of all living entities. And as the Manu, Swayambhavu, will enjoy great opulences. But ultimately, all the opulences belong to Bhagavan. Vishwanath Chakravarti says the younger Yagyalinga also refers to Krishna as he who is known by the process of worship, hearing, and chanting. Okay, next verse, 14. Manoruvacha adeshaham bhagavato varteyami vasudana sthanantva ihanujanihi prajanamam cha prabhu. Sri Manu said, O all-powerful Lord, O killer of all sins, I shall abide by your order. Now, please let me know my place and that of the living entities born of me. So Manu, here he is glorifying the instructions given by Brahma, saying that I shall abide by whatever you have said. And then he addresses Brahma as Ami Vasudan. Because just like Brahma, when he was first created, he was very much concerned about the influence of the mode of passion that accompanies creation. And Manu is also aware of it, of the need for him to engage in procreation, the need for him to rule. All these are activities that are Raja Guna. But he is saying that to Brahma that you are Ami Vasudan, that you are the killer of all sins, which means that by following your instructions, with the consciousness that you have asked me to do, I will not be contaminated by the sins that will inadvertently accompany the activities that I will do. Verse 15. Yadoka sarvabhutana mahima namahambhasi asya udharane yatno deva devya vidhayatam. O master of the demigods, please attempt to lift the earth which is merged in the great water, because it is the dwelling place for all the living entities. It can be done by your endeavor and by the mercy of the Lord. So in the previous verse, he had said, now please let me know my place and that of the living entities born of me. So, and now he says, please lift the earth. Vishwanath Chakravarti says that there is an implied conversation between these two verses, where when Manu asks Brahma, please let me know the place, then Brahma says to Manu that since you know the scriptures, do you know where the Manus and the progeny lived in the previous kalpas? And Manu then says, yes, I do. They lived on earth. But the planet is currently submerged in water. And then he says that this verse, please attempt to lift the earth, which is merged in the great water. Srila Prabhupada mentions that the great water that is referred to by Manu is the water of the Garbhodaka ocean that fills the bottom half of the universe. And so there is so there are a couple of points to note over here. The descendants of Manu, they live on almost all the planets of the universe, because as you will see that his descendants, his daughters marry Prajapati Daksha, and their descendants, some of them live in the lower planetary system, then some of them live in the Svarglok, and uh, and some of them do live on the earthly planet. Prabhupada would say that humans are descendants of Manus. That is why they are known as as Manav. So uh, it's not that all the planets were in the Garbhodaka ocean, but yes, some of the descendants of Manu that were destined to live on the earth planet did not have a place to live in, and Manu brings that to the attention of uh, Lord Brahma. The second point is, which gets elaborated more later on, so I'll mention it just for you to note it, and there's a more elaborate discussion on it later on, that actually Maitreya, he is talking about the pastime of two varas in the same narration. One of the varas appears during Swayambhavu Manu's period, which is what this discussion is happening. There is another vara that appears during the reign of Chakshusha Manu. And the second vara is the one that is also has the pastime of killing Hirnaksha. So even though Maitreya does not say specifically, but indirectly one can make out when he's speaking about one or the other. Now in this case, obviously, Swayambhavu Manu is asking. So this is happening during his Manmantra. So Swayambhavu's Manmantra is the first Manmantra during the day of Brahma, and Chakshusha Manmantra is the sixth Manmantra. So we are currently in the seventh one, in that of Vivaswan. So so just to keep this in mind, and later on there's a little bit more explanation about these two pastimes, one of the subsequent verses. Verse 16, Maitruvacha Parme sthitva pamadye tatha sanam avikshagam katham menan samuneshya iti dadyau dhyachiram. Sri Maitreya said, thus seeing the earth merged in the water, Brahma gave his attention for a long time on how it could be lifted. Prabhupada in the purport makes the same point, that there's a Swait. So Prabhupada mentions that Swaitvara. So Swaitvara is the name of the present Kalpa. The present day of Brahma is called Swaitvara. And of course, within a day of Brahma, there are 14 Manvantras. So within this Kalpa, there is the Swayambhavu Manu Manvantra, and there is the Chakshusha, the Chakshusha Manu Manvantra. Verse 17. Shrajato me kshatir varibi lavyaman rasan gata athatra ke manushetyam asmabhi sargayojitaha yasyaham hridayadasam so isho vidadatu me. Brahma thought, while I have been engaged in the process of creation, the earth has been inundated by a deluge and has gone into the depths of the ocean. What can we do who are engaged in this matter of creation. It is best to let the Almighty Lord direct us. So the word that is used here for describing the position of earth is rasam gata. So rasam gata, so rasam refers to rasatal. So as we know, there are 7 lower planetary systems. So rasam refers to rasatal. Um, but the understanding here is that what Brahma is saying, that the earth has gone in the general direction of rasatal, because below earth are these planets and below them is the Garbhodaka ocean. So it's not that the earth has fallen to the level of the rasatal planet, because that would be a contradiction to what was said in the verse 15, but basically that it has gone in the direction of rasatal, which means that it has gone into the Garbhodaka ocean. And then we see Brahma's surrender also. He says, what can we do? So this reinforces the understanding that Brahma is acting according to a fixed set of instructions. That like sometimes when we get the build yourself furnitures, and then there's a fixed set of instructions: do this, align this, put the screw there, and then if you do all of it, then something comes up. And that's what Brahma is doing. But then when he sees that something is out of sync, he immediately takes shelter of Krishna. Verse 18. Ityabhidayato nasa vivarat sahasanaga varahato kunirgada angushta parimanakaha. O sinless Vidur, all of a sudden, while Brahma was engaged in thinking, a small form of a boar came out of his nostril. The measurement of the creature was not more than the upper portion of a thumb. So Prabhupada mentions that because the Lord has to do the job of searching the earth in the dirt at the bottom of the ocean, he took the form of a boar. And Jiva Goswami mentions that the fact that he appeared from the nostril of Brahma indicates that this is not a typical birth. That Brahma is not the cause of the Lord, but the Lord simply chose to appear through him. And Maitreya refers to Vidur as Anag, sinless, because these are what's the right word? These are fantastic pastimes. They boggle one's mind. That the Lord is appearing as a boar from the nostril of Brahma. So one has to have faith to appreciate. Otherwise, somebody could ask that why did he not appear from the ear of Brahma? Or why did he just not appear? Why did he appear through the nostril? The nose is generally considered to be not a clean place. Or why did he appear as a boar? Did he have to appear as a boar? So Krishna is Achintya. And one who accepts Krishna that way is Anaga. So he's saying that you can appreciate it. And through him he's telling us that we can appreciate it if we have that kind of faith in Krishna, that whatever Krishna does is he has his own mysterious reasons, but it is wonderful. Verse 19. Tasyabhi pashata kastha kshananena kila bharata gajamatra prabhavrad pravavrade tadadbhutamahun maha. O descendant of Bharat, when Brahma was observing him, the boar became situated in the sky in a wonderful manifestation of as gigantic as a great elephant. So Varadev appeared in a very minute form, and then we see that he is quickly expanding. Next word. Marichi pramukher vipre kumarer manuna saha drishvata saukaram rupam tarkayama sachitrada. Struck with wonder at observing the wonderful boar-like form in the sky, Brahma with great Brahmins like Marichi as well as the Kumars and the Manu began to argue in various ways. So the appearance of Lord Vara is rare even for these personalities. So these personalities that are mentioned are those that live as long as Brahma does. Marichi, Kumars, Manu does not, but Marichi and Kumars do, but Manu also lives for a entire mantra. So it is rare for them also. So tarka. So tark means that they began to argue based on logic. That who is he? What is he? How did he appear? Verse 21. Kimmeta shukaro vyajan sattvam divyam avasthitam aho batascharam idam nashayami vinishritam. Is there some extraordinary entity come in the pretense of a boar? It is very wonderful that he has come from my nose. So this is Brahma's contribution to the tark. That is this a demon? Is this another demigod? But he's saying that it is wonderful. He's saying ashcharya, that it is amazing that he has come from my nose and quickly from a small size has expanded into such a large size. Verse 22. Drishto angusta shiro matra kshanad gandha shila samaha api svid bhagavanesha yagyo me khedayan manaha. First of all, this boar was seen no longer than the tip of a thumb, and within a moment he was as large as a stone. My mind is perturbed. Is he the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu? So, when referring to Vishnu, Brahma, he says Bhagavan Esha Yagya. And so he's referring to Krishna as Yagya because during the period of Swayambhavu Manu, the Manvantra avatar of Krishna is Yagya. So he says Bhagavan Esha Yagya. During Chakshushu Manu, when the second incarnation of Vara takes place, the Manvantra avatar is Lord Ajita. So he's a different incarnation. So Prabhupada says that since Brahma is the supermost person in the universe and he had never before experienced such a form, he could guess that the wonderful appearance of the boar was an incarnation of Vishnu. The uncommon features symptomatic of the incarnation of Godhead can bewilder even the mind of Brahma. Verse 23. Iti mima shatastasya brahmanasa sunubhihi bhagwan yagya purusho jagar jagendra sanibhiha. When Brahma was deliberating with his sons, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu roared tumultuously like a great mountain. And Prabhupada mentions that this indicates that even mountains are living entities because they can roar. And the volume of the sound is proportional to the size of the body. And because Brahma, because Varadev had now grown to a large size, then his roaring was also like a great mountain. Okay, I'll do one more verse, and after that we can stop for any discussion. Brahmanam harshayam asha haristam dvijottaman swagarjitena kakubuhu swagarjitena kakubha. So a bit of tongue twister. Kakubha. Swagarjitena kakubha pratisvanayo tavibuhu. The omnipotent Supreme Personality of Godhead enlivened Brahma and the other highly elevated Brahmins by again roaring in his uncommon voice, which echoed in all directions. So we see in verse 21 that Brahma was wondering, who is it that has come from my nose? Then in verse 22, he begins to understand that this is Lord Vishnu. And now we see the symptom of the roaring of the Lord. What is the effect that it is happening? That it is enlivening them. So now they know it is the Lord. So regardless of the form of the Lord, the devotees are always enlivened. Just like Prahlad Maharaj was enlivened by seeing Narsingadev, even though his form struck fear in the heart of Hiranyakashipu, and it is a ghastly form. So here he has come as Varadev and is roaring in what is described as tumultuous, but the fact that it is enlivening them, and they are described as Dvija Uttama. So these are described as devotees, as highly elevated brahmanas. So then they could understand experientially that this is none other than the personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada says that the Lord's resounding voice was tumultuous and echoed horribly in all directions as an open threat to all demons who might challenge his omnipotency. But on the other hand, he says that did not fill them, so Brahma and his sons, any kind of fear. So same Lord, same activity, it inspires the devotees and it instills fear in the heart of the non-devotees. Okay, let me pause here, see if there's any discussion. Okay, we can proceed. Verse 25. Nishamayate ghar gharitam swakheda kasyashno maya maya sukrasya jana tapasatya nivasinaste trivir pavitrer munaye granansma. When the great sage and thinkers who are residents of Janalok, Tapalok and Satyalok heard the tumultuous voice of Lord Bor, which was the all auspicious sound of the all merciful Lord, they chanted auspicious chants from the three Vedas. So in this verse, Varadevi is described as Maya, 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 Maya. The first has long Maya, Maya. And Prabhupada says that the word Maya, Maya is very significant because Maya means mercy. It also means specific knowledge, and it also means illusion. So therefore, Lord Bod is everything. He is merciful, he is knowledge, and he is illusion also. So this is referring to the fact that the sound of the roaring of the Lord Bod had different effects. So for some it was a sign of his mercy, and for others who are in illusion, it was a cause of fear. And how did the devotees respond? They responded to him by choice verses from the three Vedas. So the Lord is called Uttam Shloka because he is glorified by choice verses. And the three Vedas is mentioned here, which is the Rig Ved, the Yajur Ved, and the Sam Ved. So sometimes, not often, but sometimes we will see that when the Vedas are there, only the three Vedas are there. Atharveda is not included. Atharveda has a little different compositions. Now, you'll also notice that in this verse, it is said that the residents of Janalok, Tapalok, and Satyalok, they are mentioned, but Mahadlok is not mentioned. Whereas it is understood that during the time of the partial devastation, planets from the Svarglok and below, they are inundated, but Mahadlok and above are not. So Jiva Goswami, he explains this. He says that the way we can understand it is that during these devastations, the residents of Mahadlok, Janalok, Tapalok, and Satyalok survive. And during the reign of Swayambhavu Manu, the residents of the Jan, Tap, and Satyalok, they are praising the Lord for protecting Mahadlok and the inhabitants of the lower worlds and the inhabitants of Mahadlok. Since the lower worlds are not present. So what happens is that even though Mahadlok is not inundated, the residents of Mahadlok at this time, they leave the planets and they go to the higher planets. So, and at this point, I'm speculating to some extent, but because Mahadlok is the lowest planet that survives the deluge, it feels the influence of it. So while it is not destroyed, it does feel the influence of the destruction. So the residents go to the higher planets. So we see that the Jan, Tap, and Satyalok is where the residents of the four surviving planets are there. Jiva Goswami also mentions that this only happens during the reign of Swayambhavu Manu. This does not happen during the reign of Chakshusha Manu, where there is no, where the created beings remain the same without destruction. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada, he says that Brahma and all the sages such as Bhrigu, Brahma's other sons, and the learned Brahmins were enlivened by the roaring of the Lord, and they concertedly joined in praising the Lord with the transcendental vibration of the Vedic hymns. The most important is the Brihad Naradya Puran verse, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So the verse that Srila Prabhupada is pointing to, the Brihad Naradya Puran verse, this is the famous verse, Hare Nam, Hare Nam eva kevalam, kalau nastev gatir anyatha. Verse 26. Tesham satatam veda vitanamurti brahmavadharyatma gunanuvadam vinadya bhuyo vibudodhayaya gajendra lilo jalama vishesha. Playing like an elephant, he entered into the water after roaring again in reply to the Vedic prayers by the great devotees. The Lord is the object of the Vedic prayers, and thus he understood that the devotees' prayers were meant for him. So in this verse, Lord Vara is described as Veda Vitan Murti, that he is the personification of the Vedas, since the Vedas arise from his breathing. And Prabhupada says that this also explains why the Lord chose to appear from the nostril of Brahma. So Prabhupada says in the purport that the Vedas are said to be the breath of the Lord, and that breath was inhaled by Brahma, the original student of the Vedas. The breathing from the nostril of Brahma caused the appearance of Lord Boar, and therefore the Boar incarnation of the Lord is the personified Vedas. And Lord Varadev, knowing that the Vedas that were recited were Atma, Guna, Nuvadam. So so gunas are qualities, and Atma here refers to Krishna. So they are recitation of the qualities of the Lord. And Prabhupada says that whenever there is a glorification of the Lord, it is to be understood that the Vedic mantras are being rightly vibrated. The Lord was therefore pleased when such Vedic mantras were chanted. So Prabhupada flips it around over here. So generally in Karam Kand, it is said that only when the mantras are rightly chanted, that the object of the mantra is pleased. Most of the cases, it's demigods, almost all the cases. So that's what Karma Kand is. So that's why the Brahmins, before they can start reciting the Vedas, they spend several years, 16 years, 32 years, learning how to recite the mantras. They first learn the alphabet, then they learn the grammar, then they learn the composition of the verses, then they learn swar, that how do this come together, and then they learn meter, and after that only are they ready to start reciting the mantras, because the recitation of the mantra is very important. But when the glorification of the Lord is being done, then it is secondary. So when the Lord is being glorified, one can understand the Vedic mantras are rightly vibrated. So sometimes there used to be criticism of Prabhupada's Western disciples, because Sanskrit was obviously a very foreign language to them. So the pronunciation was off. And then Prabhupada would say that what does it matter? The essence is glorification of the Lord. That's what That's what matters. Okay, verse 27. Utkshipt Kachara Khatorah Tata Vidhulvan Kararam Satva Kura Hatabraha Sitadamstraiksha Jyotir Babase Bhagavan Mahidraha. Before entering the water to rescue the earth, Lord Boar flew in the sky, slashing his tail, his hard hairs quivering. His very glance was luminous, and he scattered the clouds in the sky with his hooves and his glittering white tusks. So Prabhupada says that in the upper three planetary system, the residents were offering prayers to the Lord, and then one can understand that his body had expanded throughout the sky, right from Brahmalok. And then the Brahma Samhita says that his eyes are the sun and the moon. Therefore, his glance over the sky was as illuminating as the sun or the moon. And the Lord is described as Mahidra, or a big mountain. Mahidra also means sustainer of earth, which means that the Lord's body was as big and hard as the Himalayan mountain. Otherwise, how was it possible that he kept the entire earth on the support of his white tusks? And then he quotes from the Dashavatar Stotra, the stanza by Jayadev Goswami. Vasantadasan Sikhare Dharani Tav Lagna Shashini Kalanka Kaleva Nimagna Keshavadrita Shukara Rupa Jai Jagadish Hare. Glorification of Lord Vara. Verse 28. Granena Prityaha Padavin Vijigran Krodha Padesha Swayamadvarangaha Karaladam Stro Apyakaral Udviksha Vipran Granato Vishatkam. He was personally the Supreme Lord Vishnu and was therefore transcendental. Yet, because he had the body of a hog, he searched after the earth by smell. His tusks were fearful, and he glanced over the devotee Brahmins engaged in offering prayers. Thus, he entered the water. So this describes his actions. That even though he is Advarangaha, Advarangaha means that even though his body was composed of the Vedas, but he was Krodha Apadesha, that he was imitating the body of a boar. And even though he appeared most ferocious, he appeared to the devotees most gentle. And Prabhupada mentions that one should never consider the Vara avatar to be material, because that would be the fault of considering material contamination on something that is completely spiritual. And then he says it's not possible for an earthly hog to assume a gigantic body spreading through the sky, beginning from Satyalok. And the Lord's body is transcendental in all circumstances. So the appearance of the form of a boar is only his pastime. His body is all Vedas or transcendental. Verse 29. Savajrakutanga Nipatavega Vishirna Kukshihi Stanayanudanva. Utsarashta dirghormi bhujerivartas chukro shayageshvara pahimeti. Diving into the water like a giant mountain, Lord Vore divided the middle of the ocean, and two high waves appear as the arms of the ocean, which cried loudly as if praying to the Lord, O Lord of all sacrifices, please do not cut me in two. Kindly give me your protection. So, the poetic verse, it's painting a picture that uh, Lord Vara, with his gigantic body, he 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 dives into the middle of the Garbhodaka ocean, and because of the force, the impact of his diving, the the ocean is divided, and because of the recoil of the of him entering the water, then two large columns of water, they sprout from the ocean, and they resemble the arms of the ocean, and it appears as if the ocean is crying out in distress for protection, that please do not cut me in two. It says Pahima, Pahima, that please protect me. Next verse. Kurahe kurer kshrupe dramayas tadapa utpar param triparurasayam dadarshagana tatra shuragre yan jivadhanin swayam abhyadata. Lord Boar penetrated the water with his hooves, which were like sharp arrows, and found the limits of the ocean, although it was unlimited. He saw the earth, the resting place for all living entities, lying as it was in the beginning of creation, and he personally lifted it. So the ocean is described as Utparaparam, as one that is limitless. Utparaparam means that even though it was unlimited, but for the Lord it was limited. So when it says that he found the limits of the ocean, which means that he dove all the way into the ocean, right to the bottom of the ocean floor. So which appears to be unlimited, because it's actually the bottom half of the universe, but the Lord quickly found it. And he's glorified as Triparu, the uh, 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 the Lord of the three divisions of the form of sacrifice. And it says that here again the word rasayam is used. So in the same explanation as given, rasayam does not mean that it was in Rasatal, but basically in the southerly direction. And Prabhupada explains this, that rasayam sometimes is interpreted as Rasatal, but it is not applicable in this connection. So Prabhupada quotes this verse from Vishnu Dharma, Patal Muleshwara Bhoga Samatu. And this is a glorification of Lord Vara, that may the Lord, to whom there is no equal, who held the earth, placing it in his homes, which destroyed the happiness of the ruler at the bottom of Patal, increase by auspiciousness. So basically the verse is saying that the Lord found the earth at the bottom of the ocean, where the planets rest during the devastation at the end of Brahma's day. Okay, next verse. Swadan striya yodhartya mahim nimagnan sa utita samarujirasyaha tatrapi daityam gadaya patantam sunabasandipita tivramanyuho. Lord Boar very easily took the earth on his tusk and got it out of the water. Thus he appeared very splendid. Then, his anger glowing like the Sudarshan wheel, he immediately killed the demon Hirnaksha, although he tried to fight with the Lord. So we here see that now the pastime of Chakshashamanu, where he fights with Hirnaksha, is also being kind of interleaved. And Prabhupada explains in the purport that as per Jiva Goswami, the Vedic literature describes the incarnations of Lord Vara in two different devastations, namely the Chakshusha devastation and the Swayambhavu devastation. This particular appearance of the boar incarnation actually takes place in the Swayambhavu devastation, when all planets other than the higher planets, Janar, Mahar, Satya, merged in the water of devastation. This particular incarnation of the boar was seen by the inhabitants of the planets mentioned above. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur suggests that the sage Maitreya amalgamated both the boar incarnations in different devastations and summarized them in his description to Vidur. So as Prabhupada is explaining, that actually uh, by understanding the precedents, what came before, because essentially it was conversation between Brahma and Swayambhavu Manu. The description is that of the Svetavara avatar that appears during Swayambhavu Manu. But Maitreya is also talking about the one that appears during Chakshusha Manu in terms of the pastime of killing of Hirnaksha. Verse 32. Jaganarundhanam asaya vikramam Kalilayebham mragaradivambasi tadaraktapankita gandatundo yatha gajendra jagatim vibhindan. Thereupon, Lord Boar killed the demon within the water, just as a lion kills an elephant. The cheeks and the tongue of the Lord became smeared with the blood of the demon, just as an elephant becomes reddish before digging in the purple earth. So again, this is the killing of the Hirnaksha. And Yatha Gajendra, the phrase as if Gajendra, according to some acharyas, it simply indicates that the nature of the elephant is that it forages, and because of that, its cheeks become reddened by the earth. So that analogy is used. And Vishwanath Chakravarti says it could also in the one who appeared in the Trikut mountain. Verse 33. Okay, so after this verse, we can take a break for any discussion. Tamal Nilan Sitadanta Kotya Shama Kshipantan Gajalilayanga Prajnaya Badhanjalyo Anuvake Virinchimukhya Upatashthurisham. Then the Lord, playing like an elephant, suspended the earth on the edge of his curved white tusks. He assumed a bluish complexion, like that of a tamal tree, and thus the sages headed by Brahma could understand him to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead and offer respectful obeisances unto the Lord. So, so this is the pastime during Chakshusha. Manu Jiva Goswami explains that, and we mentioned that earlier, that the inundation of that during Chakshusha Manu's inundation, there was no destruction of the created beings. However, during the inundation of Swambhavu Manu, the lower three worlds, Svarga, Martya, and Patal, are destroyed, and the residents of the upper three planets, they pray to the Lord for the protection of the residents of Maharlok. Vishwanath Chakravarti, commenting on this verse, says that the first day of the first month of the 51st year of Brahma's life is called Svetvaraha Kalpa. In this Kalpa, at the beginning of Swambhavu Manvantra, which is the first Manvantra, Svetvara appeared, who is white in color. And then he lifted up the earth from the bottom of Garbhodaka ocean, and then he disappeared. In the sixth Manvantra of that day, called the Chakshusha Manvantra, when there was a sudden deluge, then the Nilvara, who is either black or blue, dark blue in color, appeared in the water. He lifted the earth and killed the demon called Hirnaksha. And Vishwanath Chakravarti, he quotes the commentary by Rupa Goswami in Laghu Bhagavatamrita to substantiate the point that he is making. So he says that, and this is Rupa Goswami saying now in Laghu Bhagavatamrita, that in the scriptures it is stated that Hirnaksh was born as a descendant of Daksha. So we know that the daughter of Daksha is Diti, and Diti married Kashyap, and that's how Hirnaksh was born. And Daksha is the son of the Prachetas in the lineage of Utanpad during the reign of Chakshusha Manu. Thus, the appearance of the Vara Avatar during the reign of Chakshusha Manu is confirmed by the information of the birth of Daksha at that time. During the reign of Swambhavu Manu, he had yet to produce any sons. Thus, there was no Utanpad, Prachetas, Dakshas, or Diti, so Hirnaksha could not have been present at that time. Thus, Maitreya, being asked by Vidur, narrated the activities of both the Vara in one story. It is mentioned in Matsya Puran that there is a pralay during Swambhavu Manu due to a curse of the sage on the Manu, and in the Vishnu Dharmottara it is mentioned that by the will of the Lord, there was a sudden deluge during the reign of Chakshusha Manu. Okay. So the verse from the verse 16 to 30 of this chapter is a description of Svetvara, who appeared from Brahma's nostril in the Swambhavu Manu to lift the earth from the Garbhodaka ocean. And in verses 31 to 33 is a description of the Nilvara who appeared in the Chakshusha Manu, and then he lifted the earth and killed the Hirnaksha demon. Okay, so let me pause here and see if there's any comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. It's really something trying to synthesize this, like in the sense, for us, the time scale looks so large between Swayambhava Manu to Chakshasa Manu. But in Brahma's time, it is just less than half a day, isn't it? So therefore, the whole event is happening within half a day of Brahma's time. And so if we see that way, it is understandable that how close they are together. The Chakshasa Manu and the Swayambhava Manu are together. Whereas from our scale, it looks like phenomenally large time scale. So that was I was trying to think why Maitreya is combining the two, because of from Brahma's perspective, it is not a big time scale. Am I thinking in the right direction?
It is a possible explanation that I mean, I was thinking about it myself. There's no clear understanding of why he combines it, but this was one of my thoughts that actually they're almost adjacent to one another. The second thought I had was that um, all these pastimes are perhaps very, very commonly discussed. So it's not the first time that Vidur is hearing about the pastime of Lord Vara, but they're being discussed in a certain cadence to establish a point. So perhaps that's why Maitreya was combining it. But yeah, there are two Varas, you know about it. One is Svetvara, one is Nilvara. So he kind of, without even, without missing a beat, he moves from one to the other because he thinks that Vidur knows it. Everybody should know it. What's the need for me to um, re-explain it? Generally, uh, in the Puranas, there is not much attention given to chronology, even though one of the aspects of Purana is descendants of the Manu, and we see that happening. But the Puranas, their the dominant focus is to discuss the past times from the perspective of the teachings. So you will see that the sages or the discourse, and from the time scale, it jumps all over. It'll go from the present yuga to the previous yuga to the previous kalpa to the first kalpa. We saw that also during uh, the prayers of Lord Brahma, where sometimes he was praying based on his very first from Brahmakalpa when he was born, and then sometimes he was praying based on the current kalpa. Now, that time period, even by Brahma's reckoning, is a long time period. Like he was born 50 years ago. It's a long time, a little long time. But the sense I get is that in the Puranas, um, sequencing and the instantiation on time, um, that's not the predominant focus. Predominant focus is the lessons that we get out of it. But thank you for sharing your realizations.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. During this last bit on when you were discussing 33, I'm wondering if I heard you correctly. So you said the sixth manvantara is Chakshusha, and that is where Lord Varahadev kills Hiranyaksha. And in the first manvantara is the Swayambhuva, that is the Shvetavaraha. And you mentioned the point about Daksha being born and Uttanapada and everybody, they were present during Chakshusha Manvantara, but not during Swayambhuva. Did I hear you right?
So the lineage of Daksha is because So there are two Dakshas, right? There's Daksha 1 and
Yeah.
Daksha 2. So the birth of Diti is there for Daksha 2, who appeared during Chakshushaman mantra. So that's why the Prachetas are mentioned, because the Prachetas, they marry I forget her name, the daughter of moon god, and and this is explained in the 4th canto. And by the joint, so all the Prachetas together, they impregnate, I think her name is Marishi, and then Daksha is born. That happens during Chakshushaman mantra.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I understood now, you know, the first one was a white Varaha, and then in the Chakshushamanu is a blue Varaha. And I understood that there's a red Varaha also. I heard some.
It is mentioned, there's a Raktavara mentioned somewhere. So so I'm not too sure of whether they are all the same. That there's a Svetvara, and then there is a Nilvara or a Shvat or a Raktavara, or there is a Shamvara also, who has a dark colored body there. So I'm not too sure if they all refer to the second appearance of Lord Vara, or if it's a Kalpa Bhed. In different ways, Kalpas, he appears with different colors. But I haven't read anything about this distinction between the non-Svetvara. What's the distinction between?
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Prabhuji, like in the Chakshusha Manvantara, I am kind of clear that why the earth was submerged into the, because she trembled out of fear of the demon into the Garbhodak ocean. And during the Swayambhu Manu's reign, like the entire, all the planets until, below Maharlok, they are all submerged. So, so why the Lord, one way to see is like, because this happens very frequently, all the planetary systems, maybe Lord need to rescue, why only Earth he rescued, or is it any special reason that Earth alone trembled into the Garbhodak ocean, Prabhuji?
So there are two ways to understand this. One I'm answering based on my speculation. The other I'm answering based on what Rupa Goswami says. So the first is that for some reason, the Earth planet did not emerge. So Swayambhu Manu is the beginning of the Kalpa. So for some reason, it did not emerge. Rupa Goswami also mentions that Swayambhu Manu was cursed by a Brahmin. And because of the influence of the curse, the planet submerged. He does not expand on more what happened, but this is in Laghu Bhagavatamrita, simply states that because of the curse of a Brahman.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, so if there is, we can move on. So we are at verse 34 now. Rishya uchuhu Jitan jitan te ajit yagya bhavan train tanum swam paridunvate namaha yadrom garteshu niliyoradhayas tasmai namaha karan sukharayate. All the sages uttered with great respect, O unconquerable enjoyer of all sacrifices, all glories and all victories unto you. You are moving in your form of the personified Vedas, and in the hair holes of your body, the oceans are submerged. For certain reasons, to uplift the earth, you have now assumed the form of a boar. So the sages are glorifying the killing of Hirnaksh by Lord Vara, and they are addressing him as Jitam Jitam Te Ajita. So this is referring to the battle between the Lord, that he's undefeatable. Even though the demon was a powerful demon, but the Lord easily vanquished him because he is Jitam Jitam Te Ajita. Verse 35. Rupam Tvetan Nanu Dushkratamanam Dudarshanam Deva Yadadvaratmakam Chandasmi Yasya Tvachibhari Romasva Ajam Drishitva Angarishu Chaturhotram. O Lord, your form is worshipable by performances of sacrifice, but souls who are simply miscreants are unable to see it. All the Vedic hymns, Gayatri and others, are in the touch of your skin. In your bodily hairs is the kusha grass. In your eyes is the clarified butter. And in your forelegs are the 4 kinds of fruitive activities. So 4 verses, 35 to 38, are the glorification of Lord Vara by the sages. And this has also been summarized in a table that I sent. So it's just in a tabular form, the Vedas glorification. So saying that the verses of the Vedas are his skin means that his skin is the cause of the Vedas. And the Chaturhotram is the 4 kinds of actions, which is the Hota, the Advaryu, the Udgat, and Brahma. So in this verse, we see that Chandamsi, the Vedic hymns, appear from his skins. The Kusha grass, Bari, they appear from his hair. And Ajyam, or clarified butter or ghee, it appears from his eyes. And the Chaturhotram, they are his 4 legs. Okay, verse 36. Srakutundasit Sruvaishanashayo Ido Dare Chamsha Karnarandare Prashitrumashe Grasane Grahastute Yacharvanam Te Bhagavan Agnihotram. O Lord, your tongue is a plate of sacrifice. Your nostril is another plate of sacrifice. In your belly is the eating plate of sacrifice. And another plate of sacrifice is the holes of your ears. In your mouth is the Brahma plate of sacrifice. Your throat is the place of sacrifice known as som. And whatever you chew is known as Agni Hotra. So Prabhupada mentions that the Vedvadis are those who are so-called scholars in the Vedas, and they say there's nothing more than the performance of the that there is nothing more than the Vedas and the performance of the sacrifice mentioned in the Vedas. So this is Prabhupada quoting from the second chapter, verse 42 and 43. Yamimam pushpitam vacham pravadante upashyata vedvadaratha partha. So those are the Vedvadis that they say that the Nanyadasti, that there is nothing more than Karmakand. So then Prabhupada says that it is to be understood by regulation that there are different plates of sacrifice required, such as Shrak, Shruva, Bharis, Chaturhotra, Ida, Chamsa, Prashitra, Graha, and Agnihotra. One cannot achieve the results of the sacrifice unless one observes the strict regulations. In this age, there is practically no facility for performing sacrifices in strict discipline. Therefore, in this age of Kali, there is a stricture regarding such sacrifices. It is explicitly directed that one should perform Sankirtan Yagya and nothing more. So Prabhupada is explaining. So here, the Brahmins are glorifying Lord Vara to be the basis of sacrifices. He's saying your tongue is the sacrificial ladle, your nostril is the ghee ladle, your belly is the vessel, your ears is the container, your mouth is the vessel, the throat is the plate, and your chewing is the sacrifice. And then Prabhupada mentions that this verse and the previous verse, there are so many things that are mentioned, which essentially are all ingredients for performing yagyas, which unfortunately are not possible in the current day and age. So he's saying that the performance of Vedic yagyas is not recommended, but one should perform Sankirtan yagya and nothing more. Verse 37. Dikshanujan mopasada shirodharam tvam prayanyo dayani yadam shrataha jiva pravagyas tava shirshakam krataha sattva vasatayam chitayo swahite. Moreover, O Lord, the repetition of your appearance is the desire for all kinds of initiation. Your neck is the place of 3 desires, and your tusks are the result of initiation and the end of all desires. Your tongue is the prior activities of initiation. Your head is the fire without sacrifice, as well as the fire of worship. And your living forces are aggregate of all desire. So the repeated appearances are called diksha, and the neck has the 3 kinds of desires, which is the desires in relationship, activities, and ultimate goal. And the tusk is the sacrifice after initiation, prayanya, and udayanya, which is the final sacrifice, the end of all desires. The tongue is the prior activities of initiation, and the head is the fire without sacrifice and the fire of worship. And the living force is the aggregation, chitya. So a lot of these terms are mentioned. Prabhupada does not elaborate on it in purport also. So my understanding is that they are not very relevant for us. I wasn't very clear myself that is this a process that explains the activities prior to one taking initiation, during initiation, and subsequent to initiation, because the word diksha is used, but I did not see Srila Prabhupada explain on it. At least I could not find any explanations. So I'm guessing that they're not terribly relevant for us to spend time on. Okay, I'll do one more verse, which I believe is the end of the well, two more verses, but I'll do one more and stop after that. Somas turetaha svananyavastitahi samsta vibedas tavadeva datvaha satrani sarvani sharira sandhis tvam sarvayagya kratureshti bandana. O Lord, your semen is the sacrifice called Somayagya. Your growth is the ritualistic performance of the morning. Your skin and touch sensation are the 7 elements of the Agnistoma sacrifice. Your bodily joints are symbols of various other sacrifices performed in 12 days. Therefore, you are the object of all sacrifices called Som and Asom, and you are bound by yagyas only. So Srila Prabhupada says that there are 7 kinds of routine yagyas performed by the followers of Vedic rituals, and they are Agnistoma, Atyagnistoma, Ukta, Sudashi, Vajpaya, Atiratra, and Apatoryama. Anyone performing such yagyas regularly is supposed to be situated with the Lord. But anyone who is in contact with the Supreme Lord by discharging devotional service is understood to have performed all different kinds of yagyas. Okay, so I'm going to pause over here, see if there's any discussion.
Hare Krishna. Just comment, slightly tangential, but I hope I can still tie it together. You know, we've been hearing about sacrifices and, throughout these last few verses. It coincidentally, I read today, so I homeschool my children, and in the 3rd grade curriculum, it is Old Testament. And I just read today that in their story in Old Testament, one of the sons of Adam asks him, how do we please God? To which Adam says, by praying and by offering sacrifices. The fire and the smoke carry these prayers to the Supreme Godfather. So I just was marveling at some of these commonalities that we hear in Bhagavatam and somewhere else. Share.
Thank you for sharing. That's very interesting. You don't see the presence of fire yagyas in Christianity at all. So I guess it's lost in some time, and some kind of at some point of time it got lost or reinterpreted into something else. Interesting. Okay, any other thoughts? Okay, so if not, we'll end. Vanchakalpatarubhayascha kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sai Gaur Premanande, Di Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Hare
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you.